Hey, good morning and welcome to Breakthrough Walls. I'm Ken Walls and I'm your host. And today I have retired Lieutenant Colonel Ted Blickwedel. Gosh, I thought I was going to nail that and I think I may have messed it up. But anyway, I have a rock star former military guy on today with an unbelievable story. So, stay with us. Do me a favor and share this out. And we'll see you in just a second. All right, let me bring Ted on with us here. Ted, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Ken. Glad to be here.
Glad to have you here. So I started this a little over 4 years ago, and it was to help people have a breakthrough in life, to get unstuck. We all go through trials and tribulations, and a lot of people get stuck and stay stuck. And so that's what this show's about. Let's start with you telling everybody where you were born and raised.
I was born in St. Mary's, Pennsylvania, and grew up in Emporium in a town about 19 miles away. And in 1965, at the age of 10, we had moved because of my father's transfer to Long Island, New York, spent a year up in Concord, Mass., then down in Yardley, Pennsylvania, where I subsequently went to Penn State. And after my bachelor's in psychology and MED in counseling rehabilitation, I entered the Marine Corps, where I had a career there for over a 27-year period with broken time along the way, intermittent periods of active duty over that 27-year span.
Wow. Well, thank you for your service. I said that already before we went live, but thank you for your service. Really appreciate it. So, what was the driving force or factor that made you decide to join the military? Was there something as a kid that made you decide I'm eventually going to join the military?
Well, I had an uncle that was in World War II with the glider infantry with the 82nd Airborne. Unfortunately, he was killed in action. And so I do have some military history in my family. It always growing up, with some ties to people in the military, is always having a respect for that and the patriotism that went along with it. So it's something that was kind of ingrained in me along the way. And so at one point there, after my master's degree at Penn State, I decided that this is the way I wanted to go, because at that time it was affording me the best opportunity with what I envisioned doing later on.
Wow. So let's see, a master's degree, you had to have been 25, 26 years old, maybe?
Actually, I was 23 years old.
What?
Yeah, because I got my BA in psychology in 4 years, but that last year, I was able to take some graduate credits that were able to count towards my master's program, which meant that I was able to complete the master's program within a year. So by May
Wow.
of 1978, I was able to complete my master's program at the age of 23.
That's incredible. So you did you know when you were going through college that you were eventually going to join the military?
Actually, no, that really didn't come until around my senior year, bordering on going into my last year of graduate program that I was involved in. So yeah,
Wow.
that's when it was starting to percolate, and kind of made that decision shortly after that too, and I was working locally in the area after my master's degree, I realized because of certain lack of opportunity at that time in my field that I kind of needed to consider some other options, and that's kind of what solidified it for me, given what I had explained to you about my background.
Yeah. So you went into why the Marine Corps? Just curious. I mean, the 82nd's Army, right? So why did you decide on the Marine Corps?
Well, at that time, I always had a high esteem, for the Marines. Given their mission and given the respect that they demanded and given their traditions and history. And
Yeah.
of course, there was someone that I knew at the time that had actually gone into the Marine Corps that had come back on leave before I left the State College area where Penn State is. And that was an influence on me as well. It just kind of solidified the things that I had thought about and respected the Marine Corps for. So that was a draw for me to, because of that personal contact and his experience, to solidify my decision on the Marine Corps.
Got it. So you went in as an officer, right?
Yes.
What do you start at in the Marine
Second
Corps?
lieutenant.
Second lieutenant. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And do you go through the same boot camp if you're going in as an officer?
Oh, yes. You go through
Do you?
boot camp. They call it Officer Candidate School. And in the Marine Corps, that takes place in Quantico, Virginia.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
How tough was that? I've heard
Oh, it was no, it
stories.
was it was no, it was very challenging. In fact, what's interesting is there's what's called the MESEP program, which is a program for former enlisted that have acquired college degrees that have the opportunity to, become an officer. But in so doing, they've already been through boot camp either in MCRD San Diego or down in South Carolina. Um, at Paris Island. And so they've already been through it. But then if they elect to go into the officer program, they've got to do it again and go through officer candidate school, which is basically boot camp for officers. So they have the privilege of doing it twice.
Wow. That's got to be interesting for them. So I hired a guy one time. It's funny. I hired a buddy of mine. He's like, hey, this friend of mine needs a job. And I said, okay, what's his experience? And he's like, he was a sniper in the Marine Corps. And I'm like, I don't need anybody killed. What am I going to hire him for? But I ended up hiring him into sales, and he was actually really good. People in the comments are thanking you for your service as well. So talk about your career in the Marine Corps. Because I believe that I read that you're a combat veteran.
Right.
So you went in, you saw combat while you were in the Marines.
Yeah, I was yes, I was in Desert Shield, Desert Storm, and the Persian Gulf War, 1991.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. So was my brother on the USS Saratoga
Hmm.
in the Navy. Yeah. So you saw some stuff then. What was your career like? You were in for 27 years. What was it like being in for 27 years?
Well, I need to clarify that 27-year period was not active duty day in and day out for that entire period. Actually,
Okay.
what had happened for most of my career during that 27-year period, was broken time, between, active duty and not being on active duty. And that was through a program called ADSW, Active Duty Special Works, where I did intermittent periods of extended active duty assignments over most of that time. And then, of course, I was mobilized during that time frame for the Persian Gulf War. And that eventually, led to my retirement in 2006, which wrapped up that 27-year span. So that's important to clarify, so that's not misrepresented.
Yeah. It's still 27 years. I mean, right. So talk about when you were, were there any events that occurred? I mean, obviously the Persian Gulf War, Desert Storm, Desert Shield, that was a pretty big deal. Any other events that occurred while you were in the military that stand out that are like really memorable?
Well, yeah, I would have to say actually my last two active duty periods, 2003, 2004, I was on Okinawa for a year and a half as what was referred to as the Japanese Officer Program Exchange Officer, where I coordinated about 40 bilateral exchange training events between Okinawa and mainland Japan, between our two forces. And during that
Wow.
year and a half time frame I was over there, I helped coordinate about 6 or 7 major exercises, which the last one culminated into an actual field exercise with the Japanese ground self-force and a, a unit of our Marines on Okinawa down in Guam to help train the Japanese self-defense force for urban warfare, since they had 1,000-man contingent that they sent to Iraq in 2003 down in the Basra area of Iraq. So that was a very interesting time and certainly a challenging time, and that was one of the pinnacles of what I had gotten involved in, and also represented my lieutenant general with other generals in the Japanese self-defense force in varying capacities, with exchanges and training and social events and exchanges and so forth, because of helping to strengthen the bilateral relationship we had with the Japanese. So that was probably the most challenging tour I had, but also the most rewarding. And then I wrapped up in 2005, 2006 at Camp Lejeune as the operations officer for the 2nd Marine Expeditionary Force G4, where I was put in charge of what was called the Equipment Cross-Leveling Program, which changed the way we went to war in terms of our equipment. So rather than home training units continually deploying with their equipment overseas, that once the initial unit had gone over there, we had to revamp all the accounts so that what stayed in theater remained there under a different account, so that the home units table of equipment wasn't depleted. So basically then we reduced our footprint, because it allowed forces just to have, fly in echelons on the equipment that was already over there without constantly having to take equipment back and forth. So units take their equipment wherever they go. It just changed things, logistically, made it simpler, less of a footprint going in, going out. And it caused a modification to the logistics supply system to make that happen. And that was quite a feat, because we actually, wrapped that up 2005, 2006 in about 7 or 8 months. And it's still to this day, it has an impact on how the Marine Corps goes to war.
Wow. So you're talking about moving tanks and stuff like that,
Tanks,
or what?
artillery, motor transport assets, things of that nature. All the heavy footprint items you have to consider about, with shipping and air cargo and that kind of thing. And when you have all the different regional conflicts that we have, and that have, in different places in the world, you have, competition for assets. And then when you consider the downsizing that's taken place, you kind of are in a position to do more with less. So you've really got to streamline things in order to be more effective that way, which is why the Marine Corps had actually changed the structure of its units starting back around 2006, 2007 timeframe to meet that demand to be more efficient.
Has anybody asked you your opinion on? Didn't we just recently leave a bunch of equipment somewhere? Our government, like, I don't remember the number, but like something insane.
Oh, you're talking about Afghanistan when
didn't we leave
left
like 85?
Afghanistan? Yeah, that was rather significant. how that
That's
occurred, and leaving about $75 billion of modern military equipment behind like that was not a good thing. I'll just leave it. I'll just leave it at that.
no, I agree with you. So when you I let's go to when you decided after 27 years I'm leaving the military. I don't know if it was I'm assuming it was your decision. You're like I'm checking out. I remember my brother was in the Navy. He went in very young at 18, and he spent 4 years and then got out for a year, and he was like, the civilian life is crazy. I can't do this. And he went back into the Navy for another 6 years, and then he's like, this is crazy. I got to figure out the civilian life. And so I know that it's hard for a lot of military people to reintegrate into society, so to speak, after they've it's two different worlds. I mean, do you agree with that?
Yes. So a lot of times, that the skill set you utilize in the military, depending on your military occupational specialty, isn't necessarily, in some cases, transferable to the civilian world. Like you
Right.
mentioned before, if you're a sniper, you have a mission and you have a purpose, but then, how does that transfer to the civilian world or other combat like, types of specialties? And when you're on that kind of adrenaline rush, having to do what you have to do in survival mode, now when you
Yeah.
come back to civilian life, that's a skill set that's not relevant in the
Right.
civilian world in a lot of cases, and that poses a lot of issues with the readjustment when people transition out of the military.
Yeah. So what happened when you got out? Where'd you go? I mean, you didn't just like.
So what I ended up doing, what I decided to do is go back to school for my master's in social work with a clinical emphasis, and I graduated in 2008. And at which
Okay.
time, what I decided I wanted to do was work with veterans, um, in working with interventions for PTSD, both on an individual and group basis. So that's what I decided to do. And in fact, 6 months after I graduated from Rhode Island College, I did acquire a position as a readjustment counselor with the Vet Center program, which is part of the Veterans Health Administration.
So when you got into counseling, or I mean, what did
Yes,
you,
right.
and
Mhm.
how long did you do that then?
So I was at the Vet Center here in Providence, Rhode Island for 9 years between 2009 and 2018.
Okay. And how did that go?
It was great. It was. I really enjoyed working with veterans. The mission of the Vet Center program was such, was intact, and the focus being on veterans and their quality care and compliance with President Lincoln's proclamation back in 1865 about we shall take care of veterans and their widows who have borne the experience of war in essence, in so many words. And but that changed around 2016.
Oh, okay. Um, what changed?
So in 2016, the VA Vet Center program came out with a mandate increasing the number of visits that counselors were required to achieve in a given work week, along with additional administrative duties of a non-clinical nature that basically was burning out counselors on a number of levels, emotionally, mentally. People were starting to take extended leave time off, looking for other jobs, taking early retirement. because what it was doing, in effect, in this burnout, because of this, was impacting our ability to provide quality care to veterans. We had to choose between meeting the numbers they wanted to protect our job, or giving veterans the quality care that was necessitated depending on their situation.
Right. So today, like, you have you're on a mission, so to speak. Um, Talk about what that mission is that you're doing, and what started it.
Okay, so basically what happened then, when these mandates then were instituted, through our what was referred to as clinical site visits from regional or district management, coming down to our sites, almost unanimously, people were, mentioning how these metrics, were just too much, how it was excessive. And in fact, the research shows with what they were instituting exceeded what was known to start to have a negative impact on treatment outcomes. So there's even research to back that up, not just a bunch of counselors saying, hey, too much, too much.
Yeah.
So there's empirical evidence to back that up. And so as this was being addressed, it fell on deaf ears. And then going into 2017, I remember we had a site visit in Providence at the vet center by the deputy district director, Dale Willis, at the time. And I mentioned to him right there in our staff meeting, how these metrics were affecting us. Everyone there agreed. And he made the comment, yeah, I hear that wherever I go. That was his statement. And yet nothing was getting done about it. And so finally, I made a decision that this is unsatisfactory. I can't work in a dysfunctional organization that's focused on quantity over quality. It was just getting out of control. And so when this continued to fall on deaf ears, in January 2018, near the end of January 2018, upon embarking on my terminal leave before my official retirement date that April, I addressed all of these concerns with management in Washington. They did not respond. And so a week later, I went out with that same email again with additional comments addressing all of these issues that I was just talking about, how excessive metrics were impacting veteran quality mental health care and jeopardizing counselor welfare. But this time, I infoed all the counselors in the country in the program. And when that happened, I got a lot of responses from like 57 different counselors across 25 states and 42 different vet centers, all echoing my concerns. And that demanded a response. And it would have been in the hundreds, because after 36 hours of going out with that email, they shut down my computer. I was not given proper closure with my colleagues at the vet center that I had wanted. And
Wow.
subsequent to that, they eventually banned me from the vet center. They isolated me and distanced me and threatened that they would call the police if I ever showed up there again. I never did anything to threaten anybody or cause any harm to anybody. This was a part of the typical retaliation tactics that are used by bureaucracies in these situations to silence people who speak truth to power. And I had colleagues that were very upset, that were very afraid of speaking up because of seeing what they were doing to me, and others who spoke up. So they were afraid they might lose their jobs, or, because of retaliation that they would experience. And that's kind of what happened. So that following 2 months, as all this is going on, they're mobbing me too by having, a deputy district manager, Dale Willis, come to our vet center and see everyone individually, and kind of making comments along with another guy 3 months later who's a deputy director, who came down and basically meeting with people and saying, I don't know what I'm talking about. It's all in his head, just to put the fear of God in them, to keep them silent as well. So, this is why it was kind of a lone wolf effort on my part to take this on, because it was hard to build a network of support when they were trying to shut everybody down at the same time. And during that first 2 months, I was so depressed and angered that because of my emotional state, I had a pulmonary embolism and I don't have a proclivity for blood clots based on blood tests that were done. It almost killed me. I was in the ICU for about 4 days, and subsequently I had to do my own therapeutic intensive, to get back on my feet to be able to
Wow.
continue to go forward, to on this crusade to protect, veteran quality care and counselor welfare. And that was basically my mission and what led up to it. And if I may say, the retaliation continued. And during the course of that, I had numerous local and national interviews with various networks, if I'm allowed to say,
Of course.
like NBC, Military Times, NPR. And while all that's going on, my congressional delegates in Rhode Island backed me up based on evidence that I provided to them, which led to Senator Reed of Rhode Island and his colleague, Senator Tester of Montana, who is the chairman of the Veterans Affairs Committee, to launch a GAO investigation that by 2020 in September had validated all my allegations. And 4 months later, this led to legislation in Congress called the Vet Center Improvement Act to rectify this situation. They even allowed me to have my language in the bill. And it has been introduced to both the House and Senate committees on Veterans Affairs. 2 weeks ago, going fast forward, the House of Representatives passed the bill as an amendment to the National Defense Appropriation Act, which is basically for the military budget that has to be voted on every year. So the House essentially has passed that, still waiting on the Senate, and hopefully no later than the end of the fiscal year, by the end of September, that will come through. And we're anticipating it will, because there's no resistance. And basically what this legislation does, it directs the VA secretary to form an internal working group along with GAO and congressional oversight to look at what's being mandated to have a electronic database that cannot be altered by any party, where once a year counselors in the field can provide feedback about this very issue, excessive metrics, and how it may be impacting quality care and counselor welfare, so that from that, and with third-party access to this information, including internal working group, making recommendations to the VA secretary, and then he is responsible then to, based on that, to submit a report once a year to Congress and what corrective actions being taken. So this essentially is a huge victory. But the retaliation along the way, I've continued to be gaslighted in the media by Mike Fisher, who's the RCS chief or head of the Vet Center program in Washington. And just last year, I have to give this one example, how extreme, vindictive, and ludicrous of things that they will resort to. So in March of 2021, about 16 months ago, I was a pallbearer at a funeral for a Navy veteran nurse during the Vietnam era, who I worked with at the Vet Center, who was also a counselor. In accordance with her obituary, I went to the Vet Center March 9th of 2021 to drop off a memorial donation to be used for veterans who are receiving services at the Vet Center. And my director, who was not even there that day, filed a fraudulent police report with the VA police in conjunction with the Warwick police in order to get a no trespass order placed against me. And she's not one. Rochelle Fortin is her name. And she's still there. She would not have acted alone. She never does. So she obviously had the blessing of upper management to do this. Subsequently, I had to hire a law firm to get this no trespass order rescinded, which I did successfully because two of my brave colleagues stood up for me with interrogatories over an EEO process prior to that basically refuted her claims in that report. And one other counselor who submitted a statement to my lawyer refuting everything she said in that report. And so it ended up getting rescinded very quickly because the township and the VA police, I think, were afraid that this might end up in a federal whistleblower lawsuit, which they wanted nothing to do with. And so she lost credibility. And so my lawyer sent a letter to Rochelle at the Vet Center, basically telling her, and a copy to the big boss in Washington, Mike Fisher, the RCS chief, basically stating, this must stop. If this continues, we're coming after you with all legal means possible. And I'm out tens of thousands of dollars. And Whistleblowers of America sponsored a GoFundMe page so I can recoup these legal expenses. Quite honestly, because I had to take out a mortgage on my paid off home in retirement, to cover this and some other things along the way.
So let me get this right. You and for everybody watching or listening or on the replay, you made it all the way up through the ranks to lieutenant colonel. Excuse me, right?
Yes.
In the military. And then you go to work as a counselor. I hopefully I'm recounting all of this correctly. You go to work as a counselor with the VA, where put this in. You're unbelievably intelligent, and I think that the way that you explain things may go right over the heads of some people, including me. So, in layman's terms, you talk about these. I think you called it a personal visit. Is that what you call it with the veterans?
Clinical site visit, where district personnel and management would come down to local vet center sites within their zone and districts just to, kind of do an inspection of the clinical operations, and then any feedback people want to give, they can offer up. And that's,
My question is what, and this is a government agency, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
The VA.
So what purpose does the VA serve then for the veterans? What did you do for the veterans? What did your center, your office, your location, what services did you provide as a counselor?
Well, basically, the umbrella is case management. Any needs people might have with homelessness, housing, other issues and adjustment, into life back in society after wartime, therapeutic kinds of counseling, dealing with depression and PTSD and various conventional interventions that are evidence-based in order to help combat veterans navigate through.
So they came down, and again, in layman's terms, they came down and said, you're not seeing enough of these veterans. You need to see more.
Well, in essence, that's kind of what's happening. Right.
Okay. I'm just trying to understand, I guess, put the pieces together, which obviously they say you're not seeing enough. You need to see more. That increases tremendously increases workload for everybody involved. And okay, I got it now.
And the other issue is, if I may interject, this is also part of the problem is, people's caseloads are high, and research shows, including the National Association for Social Workers, working in a community-based settings, that the ratio of clients to therapists should be 50 to 1. And I had 71 clients by the time I had left. I know people that had 80 plus. I know one guy that had 150. And part of the problem is, there's a high turnover rate because of all this. They don't fill the positions quick enough, and they don't have enough slots. There needs to be more and more counselors hired in order to reduce these high caseloads is also part of the problem. And what they don't realize, because of what they're doing, they're driving people out, retiring early, seeking other employment, going out on medical leave. It's incredible.
So, wow. And how, I don't know if I should say this. We know that, the government is known for sweeping things under the rug, so to speak. They're obviously they're painting a picture of you made out to be this. And here's the thing: is it
They
comes
painted
down
me
to,
basically, Ken, if I may say, the
yeah,
caveat is they painted me as a mentally unstable combat veteran. That
right.
was basically their overriding tactic in order to justify their actions, which is totally ludicrous.
That's nuts, man. So they're trying to sweep it all under the rug by painting you out to be the bad guy. Is what
Right,
they're
and
doing.
I've documented this
Wow.
quite in detail, because basically, one of the logos of the VA, based on what I said before at the beginning of the program, President Lincoln's promise, to take care of our veterans and widows, those that have borne, the effects of war, in essence, you know, um, they basically, because of what I've just explained, they've broke their promise because people aren't getting the best quality care they can. And one of the
Yeah.
interesting things is one of the VA logos was keeping the promise. And so, now we're in a situation where they've broken the promise. So there are broken promises, which is
Wow.
also the subject of, something I've written recently that explains all this with all the supporting documentation that, if people want, they can have access to.
And how do they get access to that? Where how do they, what is it, a book?
It is.
Okay. And where do they find the book? And what's the
The
book
name
title?
of the book is Broken Promises. That's the title, is Broken Promises. And it was just released on June 15th.
On
It can
Amazon?
be it can be ordered through Amazon, but what's even better is through a website. And the website is
Yep.
www.vabreakingpromises.com, all run together. www.vabreakingpromises.com.
I've
And if you
got it
go to that,
scrolling across the bottom there.
yeah, and if you go, www.vabreakingpromises.com, that's it. And what's beautiful about this is it explains about the book, what it's about. People can order it through that website. And I have a media tab in there that has all my local and national media interviews I've done and their associated web articles along with that. And I have a references tab, which basically contains all of the references and supporting documentation for the entire book, chapter by chapter, for full transparency, so that everything I say in the book, is true because of these documents being available in that references tab. And I also have an events tab listing all of my speaking engagements and where people can contact me on that contact page for any speaking engagements they may want me to do, because I'm off to Maryland here this weekend for an engagement, in Pennsylvania here the middle of August. I'll be down in Florida for the sitting on a panel for Whistleblowers of America for another event,
Wow.
to get the word out about all this. So really the best thing people can do, and I'm not here really, I'm not here to make money. I'm here to get the word out and raise awareness and inspire corrective action so that our veterans are taken care of. Their quality care does not continue to be compromised, nor the welfare of those that care for them. They deserve better. And that's what this whole thing is about. And the best way for people to become aware, because of the painstaking measures I have gone to lay this whole thing out in the book, not just about the issues I'm talking about, but the retaliation, the severe impact it had across the board. But the book ends on a positive note, inspiring whistleblowers, counselors, and veterans alike to realize you can take on the government and win, because so far I am. And with this congressional legislation, that's what it's all led to. But I even offer a blueprint on how to take on these kinds of causes or support those that do in order to maximize effectiveness for the most favorable outcome possible. So it gives people a lot of hope. And I kind of lay it all out and what those important elements are to be able to do that.
Does it I don't even know how to ask this. This is definitely a different interview than I'm accustomed to, but does it concern you in any way? I mean, we hear about um, whistleblowers disappearing, or we hear about. I mean, there's some crazy stories I've heard and seen, and I mean, is are there any concerns you have, like I don't know. I don't want to go too extreme with that question, but are you concerned in any way?
Well, I don't want to cause any panic, and this is not me talking, but I've had people actually tell me, "Watch your back." Literally, watch
Right.
your back. I'm not really concerned about that. I kind of think in this scenario that's a bit extreme. That's just my view. um, to be fair and balanced. But I do think that the retaliation's not over. And as I may continue to gain further momentum with news media coverage, or possibly, with this legislation and the book, actually laying this whole thing out very clearly and mentioning names. I'm holding people accountable by name in that book. And a lot of publishers will not allow that because they're afraid of liability. But my
Yeah.
co-author was also the publisher, and he's also a Marine, former Marine. And he and I said, people got to be held accountable, because until they start being held accountable, there isn't going to be, any consequences for people that retaliate against those that speak truth to power. And that's one of the reasons we call out certain individuals in the book and lay it out, the things that happened, with supporting documentation to back it up. So will there be more pushback depending on how far this goes, with the general population and awareness and coverage and what have you? Could there be further retaliation coming after me in some manner, maybe legally? But I had a legal review done of the book, and I've been told there's no case if anybody even tried. I did a focus group, with people who were
Wow.
advanced copy readers before the book was released, just to get feedback on different things, to make sure that things were covered, that things were said in an appropriate, professional, tactful way. And, so could there be a tsunami coming with further pushback? Yeah. And I anticipated that potentially. That's why I had a legal review done of the book, just to make sure I'm getting my ducks lined up. I even took out writer's insurance, just in the
Wow.
event that they might do something, because
Yeah.
what I have seen, what others have told me and have witnessed, that they will stop at nothing, maliciously, vindictively, any way they can to protect their narrative, and they don't care what the consequences are to other people. The
Yeah.
bottom line is, if they really cared about veteran quality care and the welfare of their employees and counselors, they wouldn't be doing what they're doing. And that's the bottom line, and it has to stop.
Wow. There's so many questions I want to ask that I'm not going to. I'm not, there's just,
I have
there's,
nothing to hide. I
I
will be
know,
focused.
no, no, I know it's more about, I mean, we all know that there's a ridiculous amount of corruption, in some of the higher levels, it I guess would concern me. Honestly, it would concern me because I've seen situations where certain people said, "I, for the record, I'm not feeling suicidal. I want everybody to know that." And then, down the road, you hear. So
Yeah.
yeah,
And understand, there's about 22 federal agencies. And of all the
geez,
grievances and complaints that go forth out of those 22 federal agencies or EEO complaints of some form, 40% of them come from the VA.
wow,
And that's something a lot of people aren't aware of. And because of how this is affecting our veterans and those that care for them, the bottom line is, if you really want to, become aware and raise awareness about this issue and
yeah,
inspire others to do the same, the best thing that people can do in order to do that is twofold. Is Get the book because it lays it all out. Encourage others to do the same
Yeah.
because that's the best mechanism right now because everything is provided in broken promises that people really need to know and pass on to others for them to know to inspire corrective action, which it does because of the hope it gives at the end of the book, how to do this effectively. And that's really the best thing that people can really do. And again, to get the word out to help the veterans and those that care for them and the focus groups that were done on the book with the advanced copy readers, their overwhelming consensus was that this is a must read for anyone who cares about our veterans and those that serve them in the VA healthcare system. That was the number one consensuous comment that I've heard among other things, but that's the one that really stands out. The second thing people can do is actually you contact their senators and congressional representative to support the Vet Center Improvement Act from the Senate side, which is S 1944. Again, that's S 1944, the Senate version of the Vet Center Improvement Act, and encourage as quickly as possible for their senators to support this bill as soon as possible to ensure it passes before the end of the fiscal year.
And that's on the Senate floor now, right?
Well, it's in committee getting
Oh,
amended to the NDAA. They're going to try to hotline it this week, maybe as a unanimous consent. But if that doesn't happen, then like the House, amending it to the NDAA to hopefully be passed before the end of the fiscal year. And that's very important because that's what this is all about. I'm concerned more about that, the bill, than anything else, because that's what needs to happen to really to have this corrective action. And the book is the mechanism by which for people to become aware and inspire corrective action, because this cannot continue. It cannot.
in keeping with the theme of my show, Breakthrough Walls, I always ask towards the end of the show, I'm going to go ahead and ask you now, what, in your opinion, I mean, you made it all the way up to lieutenant colonel, which is a pretty high rank. Um, I mean, and now so you went and you worked for the VA. I'm assuming they fired you at that one particular moment.
No, let me be clear about that for accuracy. What had
Wow.
happened was I decided that I was going to take early retirement 3 years
Oh,
prior to what I intended because I could no longer work in a dysfunctional system that was concerned about quantity over quality. It just didn't make sense to me. And I figured taking on this cause as a subsequent to that, I would be more valuable to the system, to people still in the system being subject to this by fighting the fight outside the system so I could be fully engaged in this, which has consumed me for the last 5 years in order to bring it to the level that I have.
got
And
it.
so that was why I did what I did.
So
I
okay. You voluntarily left, retired,
yes,
you said, right?
yes.
Okay. And but that's not considered an extension of being in the military, right? Working for the VA, or is it?
Um, it's well, it's different. It's funny how government agencies, have that same kind of chain of command, type of mentality, and how things come down from the top on down, and things getting implemented without really checking with the impact it's going to have, on people in the field and kind of thing. It's kind of the same thing, in that respect. Usually people at the top kind of are out of touch with what's going on in the lower echelons. And that's just the nature of the beast in any bureaucracy, not pointing any
Yeah.
fingers, just kind of how it works.
I have a good friend who's been on the show, and he's very famous Navy SEAL, Jason Redman, that actually was shot by a sniper 6 or 8 times, had half his face blown off in Afghanistan, and super amazing human being. Love this guy. I should connect you guys, because I don't know what you could do together, but he's a good dude, and I think you should be connected with him. But so my question, in keeping with the theme of my show, I mean, you made, like I said, you went through the ranks, you made it to lieutenant colonel. You went on to the VA, you worked there, you've got 2 master's degrees, it sounds like. um you might be a bit of an overachiever. I'm kidding. But now you're
I've
like,
been
you know
told.
what? I've done all of that. Let me just go ahead and take on the US government. Didn't work out well for Japan and some other people that have tried, but here you are taking on the freaking United States government, which is just unbelievable to me. Um, when you look at other people that don't make it in life, they don't they settle for, they may have given up long ago on what you're trying to accomplish. What do you think holds people back in life? I mean, fear is, I think a lot of people say fear, but I don't know, it's got to be more than that. What do you think it is
Actually,
that stops
actually,
people?
Ken, fundamentally, you hit the nail on the head. It is fear.
Yeah.
And I don't want to get spiritual or too warm and fuzzy here, but when you break everything down, you're either coming from fear or you're coming from love, and not in the conventional sense, but love in the sense of unconditional acceptance of everything and everyone just as they are, regardless of circumstances and situations. And so when you're coming from fear, which happens most of the time,
Yeah.
you come from a place of fear, you sense, and that leads to a sense of threat. Then that
Right.
leads, you have to be defensive. And now, because you have to be defensive in one form or another, subtly or overtly, then what derives out of that is the need to attack. And that's why we have all these problems we do in the world today, fundamentally. So what you're getting at, I think specifically, so from that fear, there's different ways it presents itself and manifests itself. So in the context of what we're talking about, and I think it does fit the theme of your show, breaking through walls, because what has happened with what I've done has been breaking through a wall. And in a professional sense, even though it may not be entrepreneurial, it still has the same elements of what people have done and how they've been impacted and how that can influence, the spheres of influence in their life. And that's what it comes down to. So from the fear perspective, like I said, people are afraid of losing their job by speaking truth to power. They're afraid of retaliation. They're afraid of defamation of character. They're afraid of these things they witness seeing happening to other people. So when the stuff comes up and raises its ugly head, they tend to run for the tall grass out of self-preservation.
Yeah.
Now, that's understandable. And unfortunately, moral courage is in short supply, and there's only few that really stand up and do the right thing for the right reason, and it's hard to do. And I understand those fears, and I used to be angry at people that didn't stand up with me when I'm going to bat for them. But over time, it's like, what? That's okay. I get it. We're all in different places, and people respond to these fears differently,
Yeah.
and they have to make their own choices. And I've come to the conclusion you just can't judge that. And the few that do stand with you or support you in one way, whether it's standing with you or standing behind you in support in different ways, then it's all fine. You have to let it be. Otherwise, you're going to go insane. And that's going to help, to detour you from staying the course if you get too caught up in these side distractions and let it affect you.
By the way, is your book available on Audible?
No. It's
Okay.
available Kindle through the website that's flashing at the bottom of the
Yep.
screen, as well as the paperback version, which a lot of people prefer.
Which
Um,
is also on Amazon as well.
that's correct.
So I just got a text message I wanna share with you. This guy right here, Jay Fox, is a nationally syndicated radio show host that was on ABC Radio and Westwood One for 50 years.
Wow.
He does books on Audible for people. They hire him, and he charges a lot of money for that. And he just sent me a text and said he would like to offer to do your book on Audible for free.
Oh my
Yeah.
God.
And when you hear his voice, you'll say, oh my God. Like his voice is like, he's got an amazing voice. So Jay is a great friend of mine, a good man out of Dallas, Texas. And so I'm going to connect you with Jay. And so look, I think that what you're doing, and for anybody watching, I would imagine that breakingpromises.com has a link to your GoFundMe to help you out with the
Yes,
legal fees and stuff.
the bio tab in the website, vabreakingpromises.com. If you go to the bio tab in my bio, underneath my picture, there's a LinkedIn, Facebook link, and then a GoFundMe link, which goes to my GoFundMe, which would be very welcome given what I've been running into, because I've paid a price, not just legally and financially, as well with all this, but these other emotionally and family and the whole thing. So it would be a tremendous help, to be honest with you. But
and Ted, you're definitely not begging for money, but if you guys have it on your heart and you can help, then do so. I mean, again, thank you from the bottom of my heart for your service to this country. I think that there's a lot of people who unfortunately are taking it for granted what we have here in this country, the freedom to really do anything, and it's guys like you that that gave us that freedom. So thank you for that.
Well, thank you, Ken. I appreciate that.
Yeah. So everybody go over to vabreakingpromises.com and check out the book, get a copy of the book. You can get it there. You can get it on Amazon. It sounds like someday in the near future, you'll be able to get it on Audible. Maybe if that all works out. But Ted, you're a good man. And I want to say thank you for coming on today and sharing your story. And I hope that this reaches the ears that need to hear it. And Eric, I believe is do you say former Marine or
Well, what they say, once a Marine, always a Marine. So if you use the word
right.
former, be careful who you use it with.
I know, right? I know. Eric's not somebody I want to mess with. But listen, I just want to say thank you again. For I don't know what it is about the military to me. I remember when first President Bush came over the radio. I remember exactly where I was. My brother was in the Saratoga battle group, and they were the first. It was the first battle group to go over for Desert Shield. And I remember when President Bush came across the radio and said, um, basically it's happening. It's happening. And I remember I was driving in my car. I remember the exact spot because I had to pull over because my little brother was over there, and I was like, oh my God, like it just got real, So the military is very important, and what you're doing is absolutely unbelievable and also very important. So everybody follow this guy, follow him everywhere. He's not on social media, but at least check out the website, and if I have it my way, we will get him on social media. So anyway, you guys have an awesome day. Lieutenant Colonel Ted Blickwedel. Did I say it right? Blickwedel?
Yes, Ken. Yes.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate you coming on today. If you'll hang tight for me,
Well,
hang on
thank you
with
for
me.
having me, Ken. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Thank you. And we'll see you all later. Have an awesome day, and make sure you go over to vabreakingpromises.com and check all this out and get a copy of the book. And Eric says, oh, he's a sailor, U.S. Navy. There you go. There you go. I think those are called squids. I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
Well, be careful now. Some people are going to be offended by that. But
no, they won't. My brother told me that. I'm just repeating what he said. Anyway, hey, I love you all. I appreciate you. Thank you all for being here. And Ted, thank you for being on.
thank you, Ken.
All right. See you guys later.